Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 134 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome back to the show. In this episode, we're going to continue on. We just talked about safety and we talked about hearing protection, but this one's a little different. We just finished up a trauma course that Richard had signed us up for, so I invited Richard back onto the show, and we're going to talk a little bit about safety. This is one of those things that we take a lot of this stuff for granted and, things that we remembered, and yeah, we can handle these situations, but in our industry, being prepared, asking the right questions, and thinking about not just helping yourself, but being prepared to save yourself and somebody else if needed. This is an important one. If you're an outdoorsman, if you're a hunter, if you spend time in the great outdoors, if you're like adventure, if you're, all of these things that we go out and do from dirt bikes to four-wheeling to off-roading to overlanding to sailing, everything that we do has a potential to really get us or potentially expose us to getting seriously injured. And some of the stats are just amazing. So looking forward to this podcast. Without further ado, here we go. All right, before we get started, I do want to say a quick thanks to Krieger Barrels. Krieger's a maker of fine cut rifle barrels made in the great state of Wisconsin. They have a new program called KriegerDirect.com where you can log on and have your barrel in as little as 2 to 3 business days. So if you want the best and you need it now, stop over to KriegerDirect.com. We'd also like to thank TriggerTech. TriggerTech is the maker of fine rifle triggers. We just did a video that's coming out on YouTube that should be released on Friday at 5 p.m. on the installation of a TriggerTech into one of our custom rifles. So some pretty cool stuff coming out with that. You can stop over to our website, it's Wolf Precision, and check out that video 5 p.m. on Friday. But they're also great sponsors of this show. They've been with us a long time. We put them in all of our custom rifles for so many reasons, from the new roll bearing system. It's safe, easy to adjust, easy to install, and really they make for a lot of different makes and models. So if you want to upgrade your rifle and you want to do it with the best, stop over to TriggerTech.com. That's TriggerTech.com today. So welcome back to the show, Richard, and thanks for spending some more time with us here.
Oh, it's always fun. We always have interesting topics to discuss, right?
We took a first aid class and we're out shooting today, testing rifles.
Yeah, fortunately, we didn't need any first aiders, although I did try. Jamie told me as I was getting out of the car, be careful, it's icy, and I did my best impression of a ballerina.
Oh, yeah, it was pretty good. So our range is in the middle of Somerset, Pennsylvania. Right now we're covered in ice and snow. We have a four-wheel drive. We can get up to our shoot house, but to say it's treacherous walking around, especially as it thaws and freezes, turns into a skating ring. It gets slippery.
Yeah, and I demonstrated well, I think.
Yeah, nobody did any endovers or head plants, but Richard signed up for a class he found at a gun show, and then he had asked about if I wanted to take this first aid class, and I was like, I sort of hee-hawed around a little bit, just simply because so busy all the time, and it's the hours, right? But I thought, you know what, maybe I will. It sounds interesting, and plus we have people here around firearms all the time, and sure, why not? We'll take a refresher course. So I went to the class, and good job, Richard. It was a good find.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the highlight of the gun show, running into the fellow that ran the class and having a quick chat with him. It was something that I was already interested in, and so, of course, when I walked past it and I saw what they were offering for the course, it was a nicely priced course for an evening, just for a couple of hours, which is always good. But I would, to be honest, having it happen not far from my home made it even better. But it was good, and it came at the right time, and I managed to rope Jamie in.
And it was worth it.
It was 6 to 8:30, and we were there 6 to 9:30, and then we were,
hung out a little bit after.
Yeah.
And the course that we took is Rick Hampton ran it, and it was called Angel Trauma Solutions. They're out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So, Rick, if you're listening, great job. Rick was a retired veteran, so he's done this stuff for real. And it was great to have his experience in the field, and his approach to things, I think, added a lot to the course.
Yeah, I mean, his real life experience was what it was all about.
Right.
So he's been on scene at various things that have happened. He'd put plenty of tours in over his military career. And he's the guy that's been there and actually done it, which is always good, right? It's okay with doing the theory stuff like we were doing, but it's good to have someone that's actually been there and just been presented with, terrible thing just happened, see what you can do about fixing it as best you can. And so that was the practical side of it was really good. And we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go through the podcast today, I think. But yeah, I mean, the intro was a little long, and I wasn't sure where it was going, to be honest. But man, did it get interesting quick.
Yeah, it did. It did. And some stats I want to throw out here, and we'll put a link up to Rick's website and his email. And we actually talked about bringing him on the podcast and doing an interview, but he does a 2-day outdoor course for hunting and outdoor wilderness and for guys that are going on hunting trips. And it's a 2-day wilderness first aid class. And I'm thinking about trying to invite him on to host one here and have him come in and put it on, because I think this is something that a lot of our customers would be interested in, and probably something they should take for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be expecting somebody else to look after you out in the wilderness, you might be severely disappointed.
Yeah.
And that's not a good time to find out that someone isn't as prepared as you thought they should be or would be.
And here's some facts that were fascinating. I wrote some notes down while we were taking the class. 35% of the deaths are from uncontrolled bleeding. So 35% of the accidental deaths that happen are preventable from uncontrolled bleeding. It is the number one preventable death when it comes to accidents. The response time that he had for our area that he was teaching the class in for first aid, for an ambulance, or for a police officer or somebody to get on the scene was 8 minutes. And when he was talking about how long you had to stop the bleeding and some of these different injuries, you were already gone. It was 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's a 2-minute event.
So I thought from our perspective, all the different things that we do, just going to give a list, and I want to turn it over to Rich here to talk a little bit, but think about all the different ways that we're in the outdoor industry and the ways that we could get hurt. You think about not just injuries from animals or snake bite or things like that happen. The firearms injuries, from an AED to a firearm coming apart, wrong ammunition, suppressor failing, to accidental shooting, right? The knives we work with, especially if you're a hunter. There was just a gentleman that had some stones being busted over him cutting himself severely on a hunting trip. It happens all the time. When we talk about it here at the class, I literally in the long-range shooting school take 10 minutes and I stop and I say, okay, I want to touch base on this, because if you're a hunter and you've not heard this, this could save you from slicing your arm wide open inside of an animal. So I talk about that. So you got knives, you've got falls, you've got impalements. If you've ever slipped and fell from people getting stuck in the eye with passing through a branch or on a horse or literally falling and being impaled. You've got temperature, hypothermia, hot and cold, dehydration, water, and then things just go down the list from there, like anti-diarrheal. You get the shits or whatever, and you dehydrate yourself and you die. The laundry list of things that could kill you when you're out and about doing the things that we do is actually pretty big.
Yeah, that's right. It was a gunshot trauma type course, but when you think about it practically for us, it's more likely we'll get an uncontrolled bleeding event caused by something other than a gunshot. That's more likely for us than anything else.
Just one of those things that you're never obligated to help somebody, but if you have the tool set and you know what you're doing and you choose to apply what you've learned, you can save somebody's life. That one time you took a class to learn something could make the world of difference for somebody else, and who has a family, who has a wife, who has children, who has a spouse.
Yeah, I mean, and for most people, the first level of that is CPR, and being able to, recognize that people are having a stroke or having a heart attack. And then if you're a little bit more interested in this stuff, you go to a trauma course like we went to.
Yeah. So the military stuff that I've taken, I've had to take advanced first aid through law enforcement to deal with things like traffic accidents. And, our job was to keep people going until the paramedics got there. But this was something different that, when you're actually dealing with a massive trauma like this, he actually had dummies on the table with blood pumping through them, from everything from proper tourniquet applications to how do you use some of the different chemicals to cause clotting to actually stuffing wounds.
Yeah, I really like the fact that we were able to try out 3 different types of tourniquet. Right. So that was really interesting to practically, put those on ourselves and put those on other people. in a test and measured and careful way. And then also talked about the application of the quick clot and also the quick clot infused packing gauze and where you would use that and where you wouldn't use that. And like Jamie says, the overall scheme of things was, you're there to try and bridge that gap. An accident's happened. Can you keep that person alive for 15, 20 minutes?
You're buying them time.
You're buying them time. Yeah. And it could be the time.
How about the sucking chest wound?
Yeah, that was really interesting because I've looked at those things before and I was like, oh, I don't have any training for that. And yet when you talk after hearing Rick explain it and how it works and what it does and things like that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get some of those.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. And also how to improvise them as well.
Yeah.
Which was, if you get stuck and you got to improvise, he explained that as well, which is good.
I mean, that's a big deal, especially like, I don't want to say like handgun shooting or something like that, but where you get a hole stuck through you. I mean, you can die just as bad from that sucking chest wound as you can from bleeding out.
Right.
I mean, it eventually can kill you.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he was knowledgeable enough to know the next level care principles that, if you had to, I forget what it's called, but like, draining the chest cavity or whatever. I forget what it was called.
Right.
But he knew how to use the next level stuff. And and he's like, yeah. You need extra training if you're going to go that far. You can't just go buy that stuff and expect to be able to use it. But the hyphen chest seals, that's what it was. But he explained how to use the hyphen chest seals and, yeah, man, what an education that was in 2.5 hours or whatever. It was good.
So I want you to think about like when you're getting out and doing some of this stuff. I talked an entire podcast about the electric bike being made legal in Pennsylvania for hunting and how I thought, I know some people get upset about that, but every year people die of heart attacks in hunting season. Old guys are found sitting underneath a tree dead after 2 days when they're finally found of a massive heart attack because they get out once a year, and Pennsylvania's all hills up and down, at least where we live, and they got to hike to the top of their favorite hunting spot with all of their clothes and equipment, and they haven't done any exercise, they've already got ill health, and they die of a heart attack. I mean, it happens every year, and just giving them that electric bike and the ability to pedal some equipment up there, I thought it was cool. But the same thing, like when you're going out on these big hunts, a lot of us that go on these hunts, we work really hard, but how many people are actually physically trained to be ready for that type of exertion they're going to put themselves in?
The only guys I've ever heard who actually train are the guys going on a sheep hunt. Right? Those guys actually train before they head out. But yeah, everybody else is, it'll be okay.
Oh, yeah. And then like I've been on hunts with people like this where day 2 and 3, they're walking funny because their calves hurt, their legs hurt, their butts. I mean, they're aching from top to bottom from all this physical exertion and using muscles they haven't used in probably 10 years.
Yeah, well, that's why God invented a leave.
Yeah, how about it? or somebody younger to carry all your stuff, right? So one of the things that I'd really like to encourage is, and talk about safety on this podcast, the first thing I want to touch base on, let's talk about things that you should be doing and thinking about right now if you're going to go on a hunt this year, precautions, tools and equipment, things that you should be preparing for. Right out of the gate, my first pick would be get some physical activity, get a trainer, start getting yourself prepared if you're going to be out and carrying a mule deer or an elk 7 miles to camp after you shoot it.
I mean, my personal experience with these things is that, you have one effort in you that can do something superhuman, right? But you want that base level fitness to be up. So you're going to have to start thinking about, getting out and doing some walks and just throwing some weight in a backpack.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be carrying probably 15, 20 pounds at least, plus a rifle. So you need to be that kind of fit. Now, shoot an animal, carry it back. You're probably going to be able to do that. Because it's, hopefully you only have to do one trip. Right. Of course, that never happens. But, you'll be able to, do a trip, rest, and then do another trip, and you'll probably have someone to help you as well.
Before I'd even start there, if you're going to start doing this and you're really thinking on going on a hunt, that would be a perfect excuse for you to commit to go get a good physical. Go see a doctor, get a stress test, get the blood work. You might find other things that, just a side note, that isn't serious yet, but before you even start training, know what kind of health you're in at the point, and then say, okay, am I clear to start this type of exercise program and I'm going to do this? But, before I'd even do the training, I'd probably consider, especially guys our age in 40s and 50s and 60s, is maybe consider getting a good physical before you start going and pumping iron and walking up mountains.
I used to be a big cyclist when I was a kid. So I haven't ridden seriously for probably 10 years. So I got back on my bike and started training 6 days out of 7. And I got 4,500 miles in during 2020, the year 2020. And I went from not really doing very much, but being reasonably fit. I'm not unfit. And I was going up the hills, not with the 30-year-olds. They were still in front, but I was beating a lot of people who were younger than me. And it's just a matter of training. But the reason why I bring this up is not so that you think Richard's superhuman, because he's not. But I actually hired a trainer, which I'd never done before.
And that brings up a good point, too, with the hiring a trainer. Like, trainers are one of those unique things that they do cost money sometimes, but they're going to make you go and work when you don't want to. You're going to have that appointment. You're going to keep it. You don't feel like working out hard today. And at the end of the workout, you're going to be like, wow, I feel pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't super expensive. It wasn't hundreds of dollars. It was a couple of $100 a month. But, I could call the guy up or text him if I had any questions at any time. But it was really good just having someone where you could just call him up and say, hey, I'm starting to feel really, really tired. And he goes, okay, I'm going to taper you down for a few days and then we'll get back into it next week. And he'd just give you some more steady exercise to do, and then you'd start feeling refreshed again. He'd give you something really hard. Mm-hmm. But it was good. But I think the thing is that if you're going on the hunt of a lifetime and you put a lot of money and energy and thought into everything else that's going into it, spending a couple of months ahead of time just prepping your body is probably a very wise decision and good investment.
The other thing that I think to bring up on this one would be clothing and first aid equipment, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but locators. So, like, if you're going on a hunt, the first thing I would say is that if you don't have a Garmin InReach or some way to communicate with the outside world, if you or someone in your team gets hurt, and to do it quickly for the nominal fee of the device and the nominal fee of the service, I think that would almost fall in my book as a crime. Especially if you're going out west on a big game hunt.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anyone going into the mountains, seriously, and into the mountains are going to be traveling alone where, other people don't really know where you are. They know generally, oh, yeah, he's over on that mountain over there. They don't know exactly where. You need the basic stuff, right? You need a headlamp that can flash. You need a whistle. And, if you've got enough money to buy a nice rifle, you've got enough money to buy a Garmin InReach. InReach, right?
Yeah, the InReach. And they make several different models of it, from very simpler SOS. And it's the nice thing about the InReach, and I've got no skin in the game on this, is that it's a monthly service. So when you need it, you can activate it, and you only pay for the months that you need it, and you turn it back off, and it's just the device sits there. A satellite phone. Like, satellite phones are getting less expensive. And I believe the new iPhone actually can connect to satellites is what they're saying, although you can't communicate yet with it. But
yeah, it's only for emergency text only, right?
Emergency text, yeah. But so all of these devices are getting better and better. There would be no excuse. And if nobody in your party has one, you should be the only one for sure.
Yeah, look after yourself.
Look after yourself. And then, I can tell you horror stories of years past of different friends of mine that were guides and friends that have gone on all these crazy hunts, and people have gotten hurt and how miraculous they were to survive it. And just because of luck. It wasn't because of good preparation, that's for sure. The other thing I would like to throw out there besides the communication device, having communication between your group, like ham radios, two-way radios. There's just so many ways that, like me and Richard, we have our ham licenses, but ham radios now can actually triangulate locations just like Garmin devices. So if somebody in your group has a ham radio and you got licenses, maybe I'm going a little over the top on the safety part, but the ham radios exist where when somebody keys up, it can actually tell you where they're at.
Yeah, if everyone has that same system from Yaesu.
Yeah, Yaesu.
Yaesu has I think it's the ARTS system, right? Mm-hmm. And that can actually locate people. So
you've got that. The other thing I'd like to throw out there, again, I'm just going to go over a list of things I want you to think about. Not things we're going to teach, not things we're going to dive into and explain how everything works, but the other thing I made a note of, besides communications, besides having a map and compasses and all these things that you should have, is having an established lifeline of who, what, where, and when. So when I talk about an established lifeline, I'm talking about when you leave, who's going to be your contact at home. You let them know where you're going to be. You let them know who you are, what you're doing, where you're going to be, and when you should be back home. And if any of these change in plans, so like if you decide, well, I'm not going to hunt on this mountain, I'm actually going to move 20 miles west, you have a responsibility to contact that lifeline and tell them you've changed locations. If you're not going to do all these other things, that's your lifeline when you don't show up at home or wind up in your truck.
Right, and that's where that communicator comes in, right? If you've got the InReach, the communicator one, there's one where you can send different types of text messages, and you can write them as you go. And then there's one, I think you can actually write the text message on your phone and send it to the InReach, and then it'll send it via satellite.
Yeah, you get so many texts a month, and then some of them on the very small units, you just hit a button and it tells the people in your little group, I'm okay.
Yeah, or it'll send a breadcrumbs, right? It'll send out an actual location every 30 minutes, which I think is more useful.
If you're in an area where you can't communicate with a satellite, at least the breadcrumbs will point them in sort of the general direction you
Show
went.
which way you were walking.
Yeah.
And then anyone smart will look at a map, figure out the terrain, and go, he's over here, which is what you want.
So establishing a lifeline, I think if I was making a list of things that people should think about is you really need to take that serious, especially if you're in the Rockies or you're going to go on a big game hunt in uncharted territory. They should know where you're at and all the details and when you're going to report out, when you're going to be on your way home. And that way, if 2 days later they haven't heard from you, they're making a phone call.
Yeah, they know where to look.
Yeah. A couple other notes I read was, of course, we talked about train to the hunt and, physical preparedness. So like train to the hunt would be if you're going on a sheep hunt, that's quite a different training than going out for like antelope.
Yep.
So altitude. When you start talking about high altitude or higher altitude from here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so altitude can really kick your butt.
Yeah, and you have to be prepared for this. Either you have to pace yourself, so if the guide's walking you to death, you need to tell him you got to slow down because, dude, I'm from Pennsylvania. But you also have to take that into consideration in the weather, the temperature difference.
Yeah, especially, most people know this, but when you go to the high mountains, the afternoons, you can get some electrical storms. And typically every year in this country, I think several people get struck by lightning and killed in the high mountains in the afternoons. Mm-hmm. So you got to be very careful with that.
Now here's one that I thought was interesting, and this is just me passing on some good information. Let's talk about sleeping bags and shelter. So we had Seek Outside come on the podcast. Their stuff was absolutely incredible. They actually make heated teepees that weigh like 3 pounds, and that includes the stove, wow. 5 pounds, which is cool. Really cool, right?
Yeah.
But did you know that a rated sleeping bag, let's just say that you buy a sleeping bag that's rated for 0 degrees, right? That rating that they're giving it is the minimum survival number. So in other words, at 0 degrees, you're going to live, but you're going to be really uncomfortable. It's not meant to sleep in 0. That's the coldest that it should be used at. So when people buy sleeping bags, I think especially going up into higher altitude where the temperatures can be really cold at night, right? You should really think about your sleeping bag system as like 32-degree sleeping bag, which would be comfortable at 50 degrees, believe it or not. So if you take a rated sleeping bag at 0 degrees, it's actually comfortable to sleep in when it's 30 degrees outside. And as it gets closer to 0, you're going to survive the night, but you're going to start to get cold, right? It's not going to be a fun night. So like, I say, like, me personally, a 32-degree sleeping bag covers a lot of ground from just below cold, freezing, to, 40, 50-degree weather, beautiful. A 0-degree sleeping bag would be that one when it was like 30, 40, 20, in that area. But a negative 40 sleeping bag is going to be comfortable at 0 and maybe 5 or 10 below. Gets colder than that, you're going to be freezing your tail off. So
right.
Sleeping bags, they're rated temperatures. And what that number really means, I think people get confused on.
Yes.
If you want to enjoy a hunt, because hunts are a lot of hard work anyway, you got to be prepared to be comfortable. And this is where I love the heated tent idea. Like, I've never slept in a tent with a wood stove in it. I remember a story being told of some guys that were close together and camping in a hunting trip. And one of them that was there had this really lightweight titanium, whatever wood stove you stick in these teepees. And he said what a blessing it was because it had been raining and wet and damp. There's just nowhere to get dry or get warm. And just to go over for a couple hours in the morning or evening and join them for coffee or something warm and sit around that inside the teepee thing, he said was just life-changing, just that couple hours of warmth.
Yeah, absolutely. And, boots are always an issue. I'm an old army guy, right? So we know all about how bad boots can be. But, nowadays there is a fit for whatever style, or not style, but whatever shape your foot is. Mm-hmm. One of the brands will fit your feet. And you just got to go find that brand and then you'll be set. And then the other thing is, if you are planning on, going on a hunt where you're going to be doing a lot of walking and you're not used to it, obviously you need to get your boots figured out, but also your socks.
Yeah.
Socks are an important element of that.
Yeah, and how about new boots? Wear them mowing the grass, wear them on the treadmill. And this is something we've talked about at the class here many times. This is antibiotics going on a hunting trip. And I actually have been trying to find a local doctor saying, look, I'm going on a hunting trip. This is a big deal. Pain medication and antibiotics. If you're at backwoods hunting and you stick yourself pretty good, and it takes, even a small, pretty good cut, nothing crazy, but if you don't start on antibiotics right away and you let it go a day or two, you really can wind up in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to tell you this, but I have a story about this. So I have a story about everything. So I was fly fishing in northern New Jersey, and I used to I would just wade. So I just wear shorts in the summertime and just, in the springtime, I should say, and fly fish. And I would just go find small streams and used to love finding those little, 4-5-inch speckled native browns. So anyway, I was out fly fishing one day, managed to slip over, and I whaled my right shin on the rock. And I laid my leg open down to the bone for about 3 inches. Well, I'm a mile and a half from my car, right? So I just sort of ripped the T-shirt off, wrapped it around my leg. It was bleeding like crazy. And walked back to my car, got back to my car. First aid kit in my car was nothing amazing. Got me to the Medic Express. And I picked up a freshwater infection, and it took 3 increasing strength levels of antibiotics to kill the infection on my leg. Yeah. So if I'd been backwards, that would have been really bad. I mean, I was treated and had my first antibiotics probably within an hour of maybe an hour and 15 minutes of when I actually hurt myself. But if that had been 2 days, that would have been really bad.
Yeah, so you think about how hard it was. Like, I'm trying to explain to one of the doctors, like, hey, I'd like a regimen of antibiotics to take with me on this hunting trip to have, and they look at you funny, like, because nobody wants to prescribe antibiotics anymore, and they think, well, you're selling them on eBay or whatever. But this is a big deal. I mean, I've been back where it's literally a day's walk or 2 days hike out, and you get stuck in the leg by a stick or something silly that you don't even
over fly fishing.
Yeah, it might not even be as serious or what you think is a serious injury, and it gets infected. You can wind up in a really bad way in a hurry. So he had this company called
Jay's Medical, I believe it was JASE, and you could call them up. You'd have an interview with a doctor, tell them what you're doing. They'd figure out whether you were legit or not. Then they would prescribe suitable medications to take on a backwoods or whatever else you're doing. Say you were traveling around the world by motorcycle, you might want to take some of this stuff with you because you don't know whether you're going to be able to get it where you're going.
Yeah, no hassle. And it was, I think in his kit that he had shared with me, he had 3 different types of antibiotics for 3 different types of injuries and at different levels, and also a prescription for pain medication. So managing pain, somebody's just really smashed up their arm or really hurt their leg bad, and you're trying to get them out, just helping them manage with the pain would be a lifesaver. So, you got to be careful advertising this stuff because people abuse these types of things all the time. But there's a company that does this, and I was so grateful to find even just that was worth the price of admissions to the class because I know maybe some people don't think this is a big deal, but having these antibiotics on hand, not just maybe for you, but for somebody else that wouldn't have an allergic reaction to it, but you have it there.
I mean, all of this stuff goes under the phrase of the life you save may be your own, right?
Yeah,
that's what it all comes down to, right? Yeah.
So we're going to put some links down below, and I believe Rick had a discount code for this, Jace, and we're going to invite him on the podcast, or we might even set up a 2-day wilderness first aid class, which half of it's in the classroom and half of it's out in the field, and I thought that would be worthwhile, especially for someone who's 20-some year military veteran, who's done this stuff for real. He's not just somebody that went to class and is regurgitating from a textbook. He's been there, done that. This is the guy I want to learn from. So I'm excited to have him come in.
Yeah, he said it was a packed 16 hours of coursework as well. So it's not just drifting from one topic to another. I think he covers a lot of ground in it.
Yeah, and he really does. And sometimes, especially in the last class we took, I mean, he throws in a lot of the stuff that's like real world. Okay, so here's the textbook way we fix this stuff, but here's where you're going to see it. And this is what happens. Like, when he was talking about dealing with somebody who is pregnant, you always roll people over on their right side.
No, right side if they're males and not pregnant.
Right, and left side
if they're pregnant. Never heard that before.
I did not know that either. I thought that was like, wow, I've never heard that.
Never heard, yeah.
This is going to be, just an introductory podcast. We're going to bring Rick on and we're going to talk about the wilderness survivor stuff. But I think at the end of the year, everybody's planning their trips for next year. And this is stuff that really doesn't get spoken about a lot. And I'm big into the safety stuff and trying to be prepared. And, just because I've been around and seen so many situations and have gone out with people to where I show up with some just basic stuff and nobody has anything. And I'm just going to matches. Last thing I want to bring up. We had a young gentleman come here. We've been doing this for over 15 years, right? A young kid come through. His dad, for his birthday or something, took him to a first aid class, and he really got into it, right? So he's like 15, 16. He's a great kid. And, in all the years I've been teaching this class, he asked, do you have a first aid trauma kit at the range? And I was stunned that he was the first person to actually ever ask me that.
Yep, that's good.
And how many times have you been to an event or a match? Did you ask, is there one there? Where's it at? Who has it? What's the protocol? How do you get to it? Which vehicle is it in?
Does anyone know how to use it?
Yeah. Is there even one there?
Yeah, right.
Because it might be your first aid kit in your car. That's the only one at the entire event.
Right.
So you assume that when you go to these things, especially like what I have learned at matches and other things that I've gone to in some remote places, that somebody there has a first aid kit, that somebody, like we carry a little foldable stretcher and some of the outdoor stuff that we do. I'm tiny, it weighs nothing. It's in a big first aid kit. But if somebody really suffers a severe injury, they might not be able to walk. We might have to carry them out.
Right.
Right? And so you go to these things, like I know of a match, and I don't want to throw any names out there, to where there's handguns involved, there was rifles involved. I wasn't there. A friend of mine was. And that there was a quick draw scenario, and the guy had put a 45 round through his thigh. Now, it didn't hit the bone, didn't hit major blood vessels. 15 to 20 minutes to get the range shut down till they got first aid to him, because they were in a different part of the range. They had to contact people. There was different shooting going on, and they had to stop the rest of the facility to get him to first aid. So I think he said it was like 10 or 15 minutes till finally first aid got there. And in the class we just took, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it's over.
Yeah, he was lucky.
He was really lucky.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, why do they have amateurs training that fast, like these quick draw scenarios at a match like this, at speeds that normal law enforcement wouldn't even train at, and scenarios we wouldn't train? And then you get guys that are unskilled doing these fast draws, and you're really leaving a recipe for disaster, but then not even have a plan when somebody actually hurts themselves. Yeah, pretty crazy. So I thought it was a great class. Thank you, Richard, for finding it. I mean, and inviting me. I really appreciate it. And I learned a lot. So any final words or thought?
No, it'll be fun when Rick comes by. I think it'll be a fun, and hopefully we can do a wilderness medical course. That would be fun.
That would be a lot of fun. 2 quick updates, real quick. First, I do want to thank MDT. They're a proud sponsor of the show. The new HNT 26 has been a great chassis to build on. We built lots of them. We have the new J. Allen en route. We haven't got it here yet. We're waiting to see that. The new ACC Elite. We've had them on order now for a while.
We have one inbound, right?
One inbound, yeah. So they released those for sale. So really just world-class chassis. They've really left a mark. And the nice part is that a lot of this stuff, there's not a huge lead time for it. If you're in a market and you would like a chassis for your rifle, custom or otherwise, stop over to mdttac.com. That's mdttac.com. The other thing I want to touch base on, too, is we are doing some testing on a rifle that has what is going to be soon another patent that we've been working on. And we took a rifle, we had it out today in the ice and snow, which is a lot of fun, that with a barrel that was completely shot out, that had some, we'll call it secret insider stuff.
Secret sauce.
Yeah, it had some really cool stuff done on the inside, right? And we were shooting old test loads from old 6.5 creeds. Like this barrel was shot out. We pulled it off of one of the school guns. And I just want to throw it out there. It was a lot of fun, but good God, even in the freezing cold, we still got it. We might throw up some video on it, but damn, the rifle was hammering, right?
Yeah, the rifle was shooting better than I was. I'll admit that today. You put a really nice group together on one of the targets there. I spied through the spotting scope, but it was fun to shoot. Shot a piece of steel off one of the holders. That was fun.
Yeah, so we took a rifle barrel, and we'll be able to talk more about this after January. So we'll get more into details, but really, we have a way to potentially, to extend the barrel life on how long a rifle will accurately shoot. And what we're testing right now is we've taken a shot out barrel, did this process that we're doing, and it's not a coating, and basically brought it right back to life. I mean, one of the groups, we didn't measure it. Maybe we'll take some pictures and throw it up on Facebook. But
yeah, Richard's eye was a 3/8 group, I think.
Yeah.
At my eye.
Yeah, and this was a hand load that was from old. So I said to Richard, hey, one of our old loads was 41 grains of blah, 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 seated to this depth. Let's try it. And we loaded it up, and the first 5-shot group out of the gun was like, holy shit, and freezing cold, it's freezing cold. But basically took a complete shot-out barrel and brought it completely back to life. So what we're doing is we're seeing how long it will stay shooting.
Yeah, so I think we've got a lot more rounds to go before we really destroy it effectively. Yeah. In other words, have a rifle that can't hold a 1-inch group.
Yeah. So can we take a rifle barrel that's well shot out, well past 2,000 rounds, and heavy shooting too? It shot hard at the school, ran really hot, bring it right back to life, and get another 2,000 or 3,000 rounds through it.
Yeah. So we'll let you guys know.
Yeah, a little cliffhanger there, stuff we've been working on for 2023. So thank you so much, Richard, for joining us again. I really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody out there, for listening. We have some more videos we've been working on hard. One, we did an interview with Rick at the first aid event. So you'll see me and Richard on there smiling and laughing away.
Yeah.
I got splattered a little bit with some fake blood.
You did. That was quite entertaining.
Yeah. He said not to wear good clothes. I should have probably listened. So we got some really good videos coming out. And if you think of any podcasts you'd like us to cover for 2023, any interviews, please reach out to us, drop us a line, let us know. We always like, if you enjoy the podcast, if you'd share it, that means a lot. If you want to become part of the Patreon team, it's $3 a month. You can sign up at Patreon or go over our website. We really appreciate that as well. But thank you so much for everybody for joining us. This will be our last podcast till Christmas, so Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays to everybody, and we'll catch you again in the new year.
In the new year. So thank you so much for everybody taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.